And in order to keep my voice from wearing out, we're going to ask Johnny, if he would, to read the text from verse 14 to verse 26.
Did you say 2?
Yes.
2:14, 26. What does it profit, my brethren, if someone says he has faith but does not have works, and faith save him? If a brother or sister is naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you says to them, depart in peace, be warmed and filled, if you do not give them the things which are needed for the body, what does it profit? Thus also faith by itself, if it does not have works, is dead. But someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith without your works, and I will show you my faith by my works. You believe that there is one God, you do well. Even the demons believe and tremble. But do you want to know, O foolish man, that faith without works is dead? Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he offered Isaac his son on the altar? But you see that faith was working together with his works, and by works faith was made perfect. And the scripture was fulfilled, which says, Abraham believed God, and it was accounted to him for righteousness. And he was called the friend of God. You see then that a man is justified by works, and not by faith only. Likewise was not Rahab the harlot also justified by works, when she received the messengers and sent them out another way? For as the body without the spirit is dead, so faith without works is dead also.
Okay, thanks very much. As we talked about from last week, this is kind of a retelling of the end of chapter 2. The end of chapter 2 was about being a hearer but not a doer, and this is someone who says they have faith but they don't have works. The end of chapter 2, you've got helping the needy saints, such as the orphans and widows, and in chapter 2, again, what good is it, brothers or sisters, if someone claims to have faith but does not have works? If a brother or sister is without clothes or lacks daily food, again, not helping somebody who is a child of God. So the same idea in both of them. And in between is the condemnation of the relationship that the rich have with the poor and how you are to love your neighbor, which is the royal law. Now, when I was preparing for this morning's class, I might have asked a question I should have asked many, many years ago. But I'm not sure I ever did, and sometimes that's the way that it is. Okay, what good is it, my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but does not have works? Can such faith save him? As we talked about, this is not saving in the sense of becoming a Christian. This is directed to those that are already believers. But the question that I pondered was, why would someone claim to have faith but no works? Yeah, it's like you don't know, correct? Daryl?
Say if you call on the name of the Lord, you're going to be with the Lord, even though they're not baptized, or they just believe that all you have to do is just call on the name of the Lord.
That's true. That's true. Leon?
To answer that first question, he asked, verse 17 says, faith has not works, dead being alone.
It is. So why, if faith without works is dead, why would somebody go around claiming to have faith? And how do they show their faith without works in this text? What are they doing?
They just have to tell you.
Yeah, they tell you. Okay? So the faith without works here is a faith that says, go in peace, stay warm, and be well fed. Now, no. Go ahead.
Verse 17, I said if faith has not works, it's dead. What version is that?
New King James.
New King James. I got the King James, and mine adds being alone, and I thought, wow, why would you take being alone off of it. Maybe they don't believe in it. We were transcribing it, but then later on it says, his version repeated, faith without works is dead, about a few verses on later.
I would have to look at the King James to see if the word alone is italicized, is it? Verse 17? Okay. This translation says, in the same way, faith, if it doesn't have works, is dead by itself, which is the same idea of alone. So here we've got somebody who claims to have faith. They show that faith by saying, oh, you're hungry? You need clothes? Go, be fed and be warm. And they claim that that is their faith. How could somebody claim to have faith and that be their proof? Just going around saying, if you're hungry, I see you, go be fed. If you're naked and you need clothes, I see you, go be clothed. And I just proved that I have faith. Frank. Which does not happen, by the way. Right. Now, Alan asked me a question after last week's class. Is there any other application to this text besides, the one that's given? And so that kind of spurred the thought in my mind. Why would somebody claim to have faith and not show it and just talk about it? And that made me go to Alan's question, how else can this be applied? And so let's ask this question. Does anybody ever talk a good game about being a Christian and they don't show it? Yeah. That is their way of maybe convincing themselves and other people that they have faith. That all they do is talk about it, but they never follow through. That is a faith without works. Here, a faith without works is a faith that talks, but not one that walks. Oh, that worked well, didn't it? Anybody got any thoughts on that? Yes, Daryl.
But you don't see them come to church, you don't see them helping very little. It's the common for this, for now. It's
spiritual but not religious.
Yeah, it's spiritual, not religious. A lot of people, they talk, I believe in God. They don't. Do you think that that has infiltrated the church at all? Well, not only do we have anecdotal proof of that, what other proof do we have that there's been Christians that talk the faith but don't walk the faith? James chapter 2. Proves it right there. So this is not a new problem at all. Frank, was your hand raised?
Well, I was trying to think of it, but it's right here in verse 19. He alludes to the fact that the devils have some version of faith, but they tremble.
Right, which I always resort to the 3-point lesson that John has used on James 2. You got your dead faith, you got your demonic faith, and you got your dynamic faith. And so the dead faith is one that talks, but doesn't ever do anything about it, regardless of the application. Here, it's helping needy people. I could think of other examples. You probably can too. So anybody want to volunteer examples where maybe in your own life or others? Hugh.
Maybe what you're thinking about, but it's kind of like somebody going out here to one of these Harbor Freight or Lowe's or something and getting one of these carts. It's got all these tools in it, drawers and drawers and drawers and tools. $500 set of tools, $1,000 set of tools, put them in the garage and never use them.
I'm glad I never did that.
Me too.
Can anybody think of an example, whether in your life or other people's lives, where people, talk the game, but they just didn't follow up? Everybody says, I don't know if this is what you're looking for.
In my class from high school, every once in a while somebody would say, well, I'm going to get together a class reading.
They talk.
It don't happen.
They don't have. Any other examples? Hugh.
There's a lot of politicians that claim to be spiritual, religious, but in their politics, they lie, they cheat, they take money from special groups, interest groups, to influence their vote. But they're religious and they go to church, and every Sunday you'll see them right up there sitting in a pew, maybe down in Washington in one of those big fancy churches.
It's very easy to fall into the trap of talking your faith, but not working it. Robert Turner preached a lesson, and somebody came up to him and said, I sure wish I knew my Bible the way you do. And he said, no, you don't. I said, what do you mean? I really do wish. He said, if you did, you would. Now, I'm not sure any of us could ever know the Bible like Robert Turner, but his point was well taken. We say we want to do things, but we don't follow through. Have you ever heard somebody say, I really need to read my Bible more? They don't follow through. I really need to do evangelism, but they never do. I need to go to church more. I need to invite my neighbor. I need to be a better husband, better wife, better parent, better whatever. And they never do. They're talking what they should do, but they're never doing it. These people, they're talking, but then they're kind of not even taking any more responsibility. When you say, I should read my Bible more, I should go to church more, I should do more evangelism, you're kind of taking some self-ownership of that. Here, they're not even doing that. Oh, you're hungry? Go be fed. Oh, you need clothing? Go be clothed. How could somebody have that mindset that is faith? Who are they relying on to do the feeding and the clothing? Someone else? Who else might they be relying on? The Lord. Well, the Lord's going to take care of you. The Lord's going to take you. Now, is that true that sometimes we tell people the Lord will take care of your needs? Yes. But it's not because we're not wanting to walk our faith. It's just some people don't want to be bothered. Yes, Frank. Number 512 in Sacred Selections, the only song number I remember in Sacred Selections, because apparently it had a big impression on me growing up. We are the world's Bible. But someone will say, you have faith, and I have works. Show me your faith without works. Well, the way that they showed their faith without works was talking. But talking didn't do it. I will show you my faith by my works. Now, you believe that God is one. James is a very Jewish book. This is the Shema or Shema from Deuteronomy chapter 6 and verse 4, which is still today the foundation verse for Judaism. You believe that God is one. Good. You know how I've often said I wish I could hear the tone? I would like to hear the tone of good. To me, it's sort of like in the South, they have this phrase, well, bless your heart. Well, when somebody says, well, bless your heart, when you hear the tone and you know you're in the South, you know that you pitiful, stupid idiot is what they're saying. Well, I think good here is sort of like, well, bless your heart. You believe God is one? Well, bless your heart. That's really good of you. Well, you're worse than the demons. Some people say that faith without works is like the demon's faith. Nope. The faith without works is one that talks. The faith of the demons is a faith that does what? It shudders. It tremors. In other words, show me your faith. Going back to verse 18. Senseless person, verse 20. Or foolish person. Are you willing to learn that faith without works is useless? What's the example of it being useless within this text? Oh, you're hungry? Go. Be fed. Oh, you need clothes? Go. Be clothed. It's useless if you don't do anything. Now, one of the ideas that I think is true about the book of James, and one of the, not a paradox because it's actually a hypocrisy, is James is constantly pointing out how the rich are mistreating the poor. And within James, I believe every time it's talking about the rich and the poor, the rich mistreating the poor are believers and the rich are not. And they obviously would complain about the way that the rich were treating them. But I think this is where the hypocrisy comes in that we see at the end of James chapter 1 and we see here at the end of James chapter 2, that these believers are acting more like the rich who are unbelievers than the poor who need help, because they're just turning them away. They are practicing, as James chapter 1 says, their religion is useless, verse 26. Instead of being pure and undefiled religion, and here their faith is useless, verse 20. And the hypocrisy is that they are acting just like the rich who are refusing to help them. And it just shows you, and somebody said many, many years ago, and this isn't original with me, and that is, you can pinch a penny just as tightly as you can pinch a $100 bill. And I think that's what's going on here. They didn't have much, but there were some that had less than them that they could help. But they were just saying, okay, God will take care of you. God will take care of you. My faith is in God. Oh, I have great faith. Faith in God. God will clothe you. God will feed you. And God is waiting for us to do it, because Song number 512, we are the hands. We are the feet. We are the ways that God uses. Anybody got any thoughts, questions, disagreements so far? Leon.
Martin Luther said throw out the book of James.
He called it a very strawy, I think that's actually the correct term, strawy, so I'm not making that one up. A very strawy letter. He didn't throw it out, he just put it in the back of his collection. Yes. Because he misunderstood Romans. Here is a quick difference between Romans and James, and Alan just wrote a bulletin article, was it last week, on it. So would you like to give a quick overview of your article, or you just want me to go ahead? One of the differences is Romans is talking about how to become saved. James is not talking about how to become saved. He's talking about how to live saved. That's one of the differences. In Romans, it is talking about how we are not justified by works. From a theological perspective, the point is works cannot save, because there's nothing that we can do to earn our salvation from God. Therefore, it is a declaration. By faith, you have been saved. So our faith overcomes, ironically, our lack of good works or our bad works. James is not talking about faith from a theological perspective as into how to receive God's grace. He is talking about it not from a theological, but from a practical perspective. How does your faith work? How do you show your faith? How do you have faith seen with others? So Romans is more vertical. The obedience of faith still talks about obedience. So James is more horizontal, my faith relationship with one another. Romans more vertical, my faith relationship with God. That's how I differentiate between Romans and James. You got anything else you want to add, Alan?
They're just dealing with different issues.
Yeah.
One was dealing with those that were insisting on a system of law by which we justify ourselves, as Romans, whereas the other is dealing with the problem of the Christians not living their faith.
Yep. Vertical versus horizontal. Tom.
Back in verses 18 through 20 or so, is the word works, is that the way it's translated, or is that the way it's used in the original language in Greek, or is it something? And the reason I'm saying this, in order, when I'm talking to people, in order to try to explain this particular verse, I don't necessarily use works, but I use the word action.
Greek will help you.
Wrapped up in
Yeah. If you want to use the word action, it's
those who don't believe in works, if you will.
right. There's a couple of ways that you can understand, and I'm going to write on this board that I have right here. Sometimes it's, works or faith. Another way that you could do it is a work of faith, a faith that works, faithful works, all combine the two. So if it's a work of faith, it's not different from. If it's a faithful work, it's not different from. So really, it's not really works and faith. It's truly show me your faith by your works. If I was to, ask somebody, you say you have faith? Show me. What would they have to do? They would have to do. Just like Acts chapter 2, verse 37, which says, what must we do, when they asked them? And Peter didn't say, hey, you can't do anything. Didn't you read Romans? Said, repent and be baptized. And Romans begins and ends with the phrase, obedience of faith. So when It's just an example of people using the same word differently. It's like if you ask, and I know I'm going to get in trouble with this, but if you ask, your wife, do I look okay? And she said, oh, you look fine. We're fine. If you tell your wife, you look fine, well, what's wrong with the way I look? And so, same word. And we do that all the time, don't we? Don't we always use the same word in different ways? Yep.
I'm pretty sure that the word translated works in Romans is the same Greek word where we get ergonomic from or whatever. But the context is different.
Yeah.
In Romans, works are actions that are done with trust in self rather than the Lord. So they're without faith. Whereas in James, the works are what Romans calls obedience.
Yeah.
Works done in faith.
Context is everything. When is dinner? Sunday, it's lunch. Context, Sunday, it's lunch. When is dinner on Monday? See, I grew up, dinner was supper. How many here ever thought of dinner as lunch? So you do, yeah.
But we thought of dinner.
So we have a lot of different ways that dinner is used. Same word. Context. We went to take dinner over to a sick family up in Kentucky, and they kept looking for us because we were bringing dinner around 11, around 12, around 1. They gave up. We showed up around 5. Okay, so senseless person, are you willing to learn that faith without works is useless? Wasn't Abraham, our father, justified by works in offering Isaac, his son, on the altar? Everybody turn to Genesis chapter 22, please. Now, Romans uses the exact illustration, but differently. But James, when he is tied to the example of Abraham and Isaac, we see the angel of the Lord, verse 11, called to him from heaven and said, Abraham, Abraham. He replied, here I am. Then he said, do not lay a hand on the boy or do anything to him, for what? Now I know you fear the Lord. Now, we're not going to get into omniscience and all of that in this class. The point is, Abraham showed his faith by his works. If we are to have a faithful works, according to James chapter 2, it is a faith that gets involved. That's what it is. A faith that gets involved. Understanding that God is using you and God is using me to pass on his blessings to others. That's James chapter 2. A dead faith is one that just talks. A living faith is one that gets involved. And we see, and the scripture was fulfilled that says Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness. That's actually found before Genesis chapter 22, found in Genesis chapter 15. And Abraham believed God, and it was credited to him as righteousness. We could probably spend an entire class just on that one phrase because of how it's used here and how it is used in Romans. I want to share with you briefly And then if you have any disagreements, you can write me a letter. No, you can tell me now. When in Genesis chapter 15, Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness. Before that time, was Abraham perfect? When God said, or when it is recorded that God's action was, Abraham believed God and it was credited to him as righteousness, was Abraham perfect at that time? No. What in Romans, then we'll get back to James, what this is when I put my faith in God, He is not saying, finally, you are perfect. I now accept you. What He is saying is, when you put your faith in me, I know you haven't been perfect, but your faith now replaces your sins. They are now wiped clean, not because of anything you've done, but because you now are trusting me. Which is one reason why I believe a lot of things that I do when it comes to my own self and other people. I don't believe in perfectionism. I don't believe that we have to agree on everything in order to have fellowship, because I don't believe everything that God believes, because I'm ignorant of many things. I'm wrong on many things. That's Romans. When we get it here, the application is not that faith is replacing my sinful past, and God is saying, okay, now I'm going to just take your faith and substitute that, credit it as righteousness. Here, Abraham believed God and is credited to him as righteousness, and that is, despite the fact that Abraham was still imperfect when he offered his son, James is saying that same idea applies. I will accept you because you have faith in me and you are showing that faith in me. I think that concept of faith in Romans obviously is found in chapter 1, verse 16 and 17, but is the foundation of fellowship. And here it is foundation of continual fellowship with God, because I'm getting involved in doing what faith requires. Frank.
I love your picture there. It's a lot of people don't do bookkeeping, but credit is a good thing. And when you look at James 3:17, he lists many credits that abound to our spiritual account when we perfect wisdom. Now, I know I'm getting ahead of you, but the point is, it's not just one thing. It's a whole lot of things. And it's just like journal entries on the credit line. There's a lot of money on one and not too much money on another line, and another line may be nothing. But the point is, add it all up, and it really gets your attention. See, in 3:17, he uses the term peaceful, gentle, easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits. And if I have to help my brother and begrudge it, it's not abounding to anybody's bank account, you see, or crediting to anybody's spiritual bank account. But if I'm doing what I need to do because I love God and want to obey Him, then it's going to abound or credit my spiritual account. I don't want to drag you too far away from the lesson. It seems so easy. Why do we complicate it?
Alan?
James connecting the wording of Genesis 15:6, that faith was counted to him for righteousness, with Genesis 22, shows us that being declared righteous by God is not a one-time thing. It happens repeatedly through our lives, and that's how we remain righteous before God by faith.
Yep.
The other thing about that, you were referencing Romans 4, where Romans 15:6 is quoted. Even in Romans 4, that chapter that emphasizes that Abraham was saved by faith, not by works. Verse 12 of Romans 4 speaks of those who walk in the steps of faith that Abraham walked in. Active faith.
Yep. The obedience of faith, an act of faith, a faithful work, a work of faith. They're not contradictory. And he was called God's friend. How many people in the Old Testament were called God's friend? Abraham? Moses? David was called a man after God's own heart. Was he called a friend?
Well,
There's only like 2 or 3 people. And maybe because only 2 or 3 in the Old Testament were called God's friend, this should be even more significant to us. When Jesus was getting ready to go to the cross, he said, no longer do I call you, my servants. I call you what? My friend. You see that a person is justified by works and not by faith alone. In the same way, wasn't Rahab the prostitute also justified by works in receiving the messengers and sending them out by a different route? For just as the body without the spirit is dead, so also faith without works is dead. And we've got, you go back to chapter 1 and verse 18. By his own choice, he gave us birth by the word of truth, so that we be a kind of first fruits of his creature. And you go to verse 21, the implanted word, which is the idea of life. Sin leads to death. Chapter 1, verse 15. And after desire hath deceived, he gives birth to sin. And when sin is fully grown, he gives birth to death. But we have a living faith. And just as the body without the spirit is dead, so also faith without works is dead. I don't know if this is going too far in this analogy. If it is, let me know. Faith energizes the works. Everybody can agree with that? Faith energizes the works. My spirit energizes my body. Without my spirit, my body is dead. So, he's using a practical application about what death is. It's the separation of the spirit from the body. Faith without works is like a dead body. It is not active. It is not living. It is not what he talked about in chapter 1. Now, when we look at Rahab, you see that a person is justified also. Why did she receive the messengers and send them out by a different route? Anybody remember?
She had heard,
Go ahead, Jerry.
well, she had heard of the works of the people in the desert. She heard about all this stuff, and she chose to be an aid to them.
Absolutely. So, she had faith in God. It had been 40 years since those works, because they wandered in the wilderness for 40 years. It had been 40 years since the escape from Egypt. She had heard about it. Her faith in God made her get involved and protect these people. Was it dangerous for her to protect them?
Yes, true.
Faith gets involved. Faith can be risky. And she sent them out by a different route. Now, we know more from the story from Joshua that's not here. How did the Israelites know where Rahab was? Okay, scarlet piece of cloth was hanging from the window. What power is there in that cloth? None. Was it put there by faith? It was put there by faith. Did the Israelites respond to that? They responded to that. Faith gets involved. Faith without works doesn't get involved. It just talks. Hugh. Yeah. Absolutely. Anybody got any questions on chapter 2? Okay, let's get to the worksheet. Who are the teachers in James chapter 3, verse 1? I don't know if we'll be able to discuss it. But who are the teachers in James chapter 3, verse 1? Well, not many should become teachers, my brothers, because you know that we will receive a stricter judgment. And now they receive this warning. I don't cover what this warning is here, and we can get that to later. Okay, but when we look at the text, we try to decide who the teachers are. We know that it is a limited group, because not everybody should be one, which is the opposite of Hebrews chapter 5, verse 12, which says, all of you ought to be teachers by now. So this is not just a general teaching that is to be done by everybody. The second, not only is this a limited group, because not everybody should, James also includes himself as one of these. Because he doesn't say, not many should become, or he doesn't say, you know that he or they will receive a stricter judgment. He says, we will receive a stricter judgment. Well, so we know it's not everyone. We know that James is one of these. Third, elsewhere in James, he specifically mentions elders, chapter 5, verse 14. In chapter 5, verse 14, it doesn't specifically mention teaching. It does mention praying. But we do know that overseers are to be teachers. 1 Timothy chapter, it should say 3, and Titus chapter 1. Fourth, you go outside of James' terminology. James uses the term teacher alongside of pastors. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 11. And there uses the same word or idea of some. Then you broaden it historically. Synagogues, and James was written to Jewish believers. They had certain groups within them that included teachers and elders. And not all teachers were elders, but I believe all elders were teachers. And there's more material there, but my conclusion is, whether it is more than, it might be, but we do know definitely that the warning, let not many become teachers, would apply to let not everybody just become an elder or an overseer. Now, could it have a broader prospect also? But because James was an elder, Acts chapter 15, that is one of the reasons why I would include elders. Like I said, it could be broader, but at least That is one of the groups that it includes. And if you want to discuss that further next week, we can. Thank you very much. Oh, real quick, for those of you that know, tomorrow I have my appointment with the voice doctor for my throat, so please keep me in your prayers for that. Thank you.